Great. Okay. And welcome. And we are so glad you're here with us. Oh my goodness.
Thank
Uh,
you. I'm glad to be invited.
yeah, I think we all like to hear how this all came about for you. The writing of this group of poetry. Um, what might be your, did you have a springboard thing or something that sparked this for you?
Being born sparked it for me.
That's
Growing
true.
up, breathing the air of patriarchy sparked it for me. How
Yeah,
many of you actually have a copy now of this book?
we all do.
Okay.
We all do. Yes.
Um, I don't know if any of you know much about my personal background, but I'll just start talking, and whoever's in charge can just kind of move it one way or another if I get a little too much on particular things that you might not want to hear about. Um,
Sounds good.
I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. You have heard of Utah.
Oh, yeah.
You have heard of the Mormons that
Sure.
are now wish to be called by the actual name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was born with very, very deep roots in Mormondom. My ancestors on both sides were pioneers, and many of them walked across the plains. My own grandmother walked across the plains when she was 8 years old to get from the east to Utah. So this was just the world that I was born into, and it was a lovely world. We had wonderful community. We had great principles to try to live up to. And I had many, many good things that were mine growing up in this community. Um, it must have been rather early when something in my brain looked around and said, how come all the important things in church and in the government are all being done by men? I don't understand that. And all of the scriptures that we read, of course, I mean, we all love Jesus and he was a man and that was fine. But the whole phenomenon somehow, as I was quite young, struck me that something is amiss here. I don't get it. And later on, of course, I discovered that in Mormon theology, there is the concept of a heavenly mother, but we never talk about her. She's not an active part of our experience, and we don't know how she fits into the heavenly situation. So that really interested me. And I began to kind of watch out for that and ask people about that. And there were all, socially, there were all these issues coming up throughout all of the decades. Um, the Equal Rights Amendment and all of the things that were looking at gender and somehow establishing the fact that maleness was the standard and femaleness was the other. That was just the way it was. That was just evident. And but somehow in my own brain and heart, that's not the way it was supposed to be. Somehow, because I was smart, I was the smartest kid in the class growing up, and I was good. But the deacons at church were the young men, and at age 12, a young boy becomes a deacon, and they pass the sacrament and do various things. And of course, women and girls are loved and get to participate in this way and the other. But I just found that I needed something so much more than that. And I grabbed hold of the concept of God the Mother, saying, it is not okay that when the phrase a motherless house was very early established in my brain, that we live in a motherless house. In my church and in our society, we live in a motherless house. And of course, in my church, I had to deal with some of the bizarre things that most of you have never had to deal with, such as polygamy, to figure out this is what God commanded the founding prophet to do. This strange, awful thing that demeans women and makes them this number of support, this support system for the men to have them continue up the path toward godhood. And we don't need to get into some of the really more weird concepts that have been, and to some extent still are, in Mormondom. But it was, when I read Mary Daly, Catholic scholar, when I read her statement that said, if God is male, then the male is God. And, that just sealed it for me. That is true everywhere you look. If God is male, then the male is God. And rather than saying, well, okay, that's the way it is, God is male, and somewhere, evidently, there's a wife or two or three or four or five that we can call Heavenly Mother. I mean, it's bizarre. It is bizarre. But so my brain had to struggle with that. But in my own heart, I concluded there's something wrong. And the wrongness is not within me. The wrongness is in our concept of God. Because whatever God is has to be a balance of maleness and femaleness, as we human beings are a balance of maleness and femaleness. And the importance, the validity, all of the wonderful things about femaleness have to be weighed as perfectly harmonious, and half of whatever goodness religion should be, certainly half of whatever God is. So anyway, I just began, I studied. The first thing I wrote was a little piece called Letters from a Motherless House, telling about just a letter to the mother. Where are you? Why aren't you here? We need you. This is what's been happening in history. But in the meantime, I became a published writer, and I married in the Salt Lake Mormon Temple in 1966 to a very dear man. And if any of you have read any of my biographical material, you will know that I married a very dear man who also was a gay man, Gerald, and he was right with me in all of these concepts that I was working with. And in a lot of ways, we had a good marriage. Eventually, that marriage had to end because he was finding out that he needed to be who he felt he had been born to be. But we always remained good friends. And then, and he insisted that we publish a little book of mine called Beginnings of Poetry. I had always written these little poems, and I thought, these will all be hidden and maybe my children will find them one day. But he said, no, we're going to publish those. So we borrowed $2,000 and put out this little book called Beginnings that just took off amazingly. I could not believe it. And it really made me a household name in Mormondom. And it even reached beyond Mormondom. So that was the thing that set me on the path of being a writer. And much of the things that I wrote had to do with the place of women. I wrote a really fine book soon after that called Daughters of Light, looking at the spiritual experiences that were documented by the early Mormon women in terms of speaking in tongues, of receiving revelation, of all of these interesting things. So anyway, the concept of the divinity of woman, because of the divinity of our Heavenly Mother, was paramount in my thinking, and in my professional work. It's remarkable that been able to make a living with my words, and that's kind of remarkable. But the major thing that I did way back then in the 80s was to write this one woman play, Mother Wove the Morning. I don't know if any of you have come upon that in your, here, I just want to show you.
Mother wove the morning, like weaving? No. She's gonna show us, yeah.
This is the cover of the play book, Mother Wove the Morning, in which I play 16 women throughout history in search of the female face of God.
Wow.
And my husband and I, we published this playbook sometime afterwards. It has photographs of all of the 16 women that I play, and I mortgaged my house to get the money to do a really excellent professional DVD of this. So if anybody's interested, you can find this on my website. We have the full performance of me playing all these 16 women. But this was just so thrilling to me. I cannot even tell you how thrilling it was to take all of the historical material I had gathered and place it in the mouths of these 16 women throughout history, in their search, they're yearning for, they're having, they're losing, or whatever the concept of the female deity. So this was the first major thing that I did on the subject of God the Mother. And that really put me on the map. There were, by the time I finished performing that play, I had performed it over 300 times.
Wow.
In all across the United States. And even maybe you know the name Rianne Eisler, who wrote the Partnership Way and a number of things. She invited me to perform this play on Crete at the first International Partnership Conference.
Wow.
And so this play really had a wonderful, strong life. And I found myself being invited by groups of every religious strain you can think of, because they're in one way or another, they too were searching for God the Mother. And it was routine that I received standing ovations from all of these groups of people. So I was thrilled to have that as something that I knew would be, my own little contribution to the change that has to happen to reconceive our maker or makers, or however you want to figure out how male and female work together in that. So I did many other kinds of books that relate a little bit to this and to other things, but it was somehow in, and my frustration grew about why my own church, and strangely, even though I am obviously something of a heretic, strangely, I have been well loved in my community. And the general leadership in Salt Lake City has sometimes been very suspicious of me, but they have not done anything.
They haven't done anything, that's
People
nice.
who have done less than I have in my church have been excommunicated.
Yes, yes.
It's kind of a miracle that I have been so well protected. And honestly, down here at the lower level, in with my bishop, that is the name of the man who is over the local ward, which is the smaller congregation, and the stake president, who is over about 10 different wards. I have had nothing but excellent relationships with those men. They have been supportive of everything I've done on this subject and others. And of course, the subject, one of the subjects that I was sort of forced into by virtue of my experience was a book that I wrote called Goodbye, I Love You, which was the story of my life with my husband, Gerald, who, when we divorced and he went off to find his true love in the gay world, he died of AIDS. And that was in my home where I was taking care of him at the end. And realizing that we had a story that could be useful. I wrote a book called Goodbye, I Love You, that was published by Random House and was a very large and impactful book. Random House sent me on a tour of about 15 cities across the country. And that was a landmark thing, certainly in my church, and even to some small extent nationally. It helped to change the feeling about our LGBT sisters and brothers. Anyway, I'm taking a variety of little side trips here, but
Well, it's extremely interesting to us, but and our next question sort of comes out of what you have just said, because we can imagine how that book would be very helpful to that community, just as this collection of poems is to us. And we were looking at the subtitle of this collection of poems, which is, Poems to Heal the World, and wondered if you had comments about that today, thoughts about that on application today. What does it mean to you? Well, when it was published 5 years ago, but also maybe what it would mean in the present.
Well, certainly. First, let me just kind of finish the story that brings me up to the publication of this book. I thought that I had done everything that I could do with this play, Mother Wolf of the Morning, and the 16 women who spoke through history. But a number of things happened that grabbed my attention, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not done yet. I'm not done. We are not doing anywhere near what we need to do in my church and certainly in so many others." So anyway, I heard a gentleman speak one time, and it made me so angry. I cried and cried, and I thought, I'm getting back to this subject. So the next day after I cried, I sat down and I wrote a poem. And that surprised me, because I hadn't written poetry for a long time, even though that's how I got to be on the map. So I wrote a poem, and then I wrote another one. And the next day I wrote another one and another one. And soon my anger just dissolved into excitement. And I thought, my gosh, this is really important. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote and created all of these poems. And then it was, published a few years ago, as you know, by a publisher in Utah. And it has been sufficiently successful in finding its way out to other groups like you folks. I mean, the Church of the Brethren, which I mean, I'm sure that the reasoning for that phrase to still be the name of the church, I'm sure that is. You're laughing. See, I don't know. I know nothing. I know very little about the name of your church, the functions of your church. But as I'm looking here and seeing so many women, I mean, I know that you are, I believe that functionally you are a partnership society. Am I right?
With you, yes. Yeah, it is, brothers and sisters in Christ, yeah.
You're moving toward it. See, I don't, I don't know. But anyway, to know that this book has reached you folks is thrilling for me. And I know that it has reached many, many, many different religious groups. And with different language, so many of us are hunting for the mother. And so why is this important? The question was just raised. Why do we need this? Do we need to heal the world? Well, Lordy, look around and say, oh no, we don't need to heal the world. We're fine drifting along on this absolutely outrageous, violent patriarchy that we've got going all over the world. No, that's not okay. And it would be hard to, well, if things suddenly turned around and women were in charge, of course we would be less violent. But that is not the goal. The goal is partnership.
Yeah.
Out of patriarchy into partnership. We don't want matriarchy. We want partnership. That is really the essential move that must happen. And just as the Dark Ages gave way to the Enlightenment in that same amount of movement, patriarchy must give way to partnership. It's that essential. And it's up to us to cause that to happen. So as we look around today, if we were to supplant all of the men in Congress, all of the men in whatever with women, that would not necessarily solve everything. We have to also bring a female sensibility. I mean, it's possible for women to just get in jobs and behave as men do. That doesn't usually happen. There's usually something different when women are in charge. But what must happen is somehow, and we're seeing it little bit by little bit by little bit, that young women are just not putting up for it. Even in my own church, young women, for the first time in the statistical history of my church, there's more men than women, because especially young women have been leaving the church because they're saying, I don't need this. I'm as good as any man ever was in this church, and I don't need this. So there are all kinds of reasons that women are waking up. And as men observe women waking up, there's something in them that wakes up as well. And all of the specifics about exactly how a new era of partnership, how that could happen step by step by step, I don't know. But it is happening with more women taking public places, bringing a female sensibility, with people just waking up to the bizarreness of the patriarchal violence that has gone on and still goes on in so many places of the world. So to the question that was asked, some of you respond to what I just said. What do you see? What do you see that if all of the religious people across the land were to read this book, for example, and employ it in their presentation of who they are and who society is and who God is, how do you see that would make a big difference? I want to hear somebody tell me.
Well, I definitely think that it would meet with other um, uh, impetuses for change and strengthen, they would strengthen each other. Because I think that while some women might not be religiously inclined, this still would speak to them. Well, like your atheist or Pope poem that I loved. It was great. Uh, it speaks to many people
Yeah,
from many different perspectives.
right. Yeah. You know, as you were speaking, I just popped into my mind the memory of, oh, I forgot who it was. Some movie star a long time ago made the comment that what's wrong with the world is we've got testosterone poisoning. We've got too much maleness going on. We just do. Should we spend a little time reading a few of these poems? Does anybody have a poem you would like me to read and we could talk about?
How about the Pope?
Just
I'm sorry?
What about,
Tell me a page number.
ooh, I have an ebook, so it's not the same.
Oh, what's the name?
Page
The Pope and the Atheist.
Page 9.
Page 9 in the actual book? Okay, page
No.
9. Oh, oh yeah. Ask the Pope or ask an atheist.
Uh-huh.
The maleness of God is ubiquitous like oxygen or sand. That sly pronoun just pops up without solicitation. Ask the Pope about the gender of the divine, and a catechism from the year 1993 replies, he is neither man nor woman. He is God. Or ask even a female atheist, tell me about God. She will narrow her eyes and say, God? There is no God. He does not exist. Miraculous. Even without existing, God wears a suit and a tie.
Yep.
That's my favorite line.
Now, maybe the new Pope will be,
Maybe.
I don't know, Catholicism has some underlying female energy going on. You know, they have Mary, they wear
Yes.
robes. If any of you saw the movie Conclave, it's really,
Yeah.
boy, it ends in this bizarre place.
Mind-blowing.
I would encourage you to see that movie. Because femaleness is creeping into patriarchy everywhere you look. It just is.
Isn't
Somebody
that
choose
what
another poem.
feel threatened? You know, that's right.
Who has another short poem?
Page 56.
Page 56.
What do you say, JD Dance?
I want to do that.
Okay. I want to do that. We have chased the tail of Eve's disobedience for centuries, and it has gotten us nowhere. In the poem that is Eve, here's how it happened. She saw the tree of life. She watched the growing and the greening, the blossoming and the bursting, and she said, I want to do that. And so she took the first sweet bite, carefully, carefully, going about her mother's business.
I have a question about when you finished all these poems, how did you know you were done?
I wasn't sure, but I thought I've got to just take what I have now
Mhm.
and publish it. And I haven't written a lot of these particular this particular genre of poetry since then, but I just said, okay, that's enough, and here's the book.
Fair enough. It's probably never ending, so
Yeah.
you have to kind of,
I think in essence, a poem is never done.
yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way, but I looked at poems that I wrote 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and thought, wait, I'd like to change that.
Oh, of course, of course. Okay, here's a short one that I like, page 18. Common sense.
Yeah.
I may not be the sharpest knife in the chandelier or the brightest bulb in the drawer, but seeing the creatures out in the zoo and the creatures up in the blue and the creatures on Fifth Avenue who are pretty equally girl and guy, I will not buy the Brooklyn Bridge, nor will I buy a story that says the creator of all the creatures, including me, was one or two or three male beings. Never mind how potent their omnipotence might be. A lot of people really like this longer one called A God Who Looks Like Me. Shall I read that one?
Sure.
Please.
Page 11.
Please do.
A God Who Looks Like Me. I studied the drawings and the statues and the words marked God, hoping to find a face that looks like me, a female face. But they all looked like my brothers. And I love my brothers, but it's like finding an empty stocking on Christmas morning and wondering why I have not been good enough, not good enough to look like God. But not wanting to spoil the celebration for my brothers who never notice. A voice said, "Come to the grove. At the grove, there is always a God who looks like you." I went to the grove, and there were ribboned streams that flowed and curved, and there were trees stately in long green gowns that waved in the wind. A voice said, "Come to the pool." I went to the pool, and I knelt and peered into the water, still as a mirror, still as a moon, and I saw the image of God. There was one face, and then the face became two, like when you stare with soft vision. And one of the faces looked like me. She said, "It is wonderful to see you seeing me." He said, "I am so sorry. It never was intended that she be erased. Mistakes were made." Then she said, "Bless you for searching until you found me. And do forgive your brothers, for they knew not what they did. But I knew, and I know, and I weep. You and I are half of heaven, and to forget that is a curse in the land." Then he said, "Go tell it on the mountain." "But this is only a poem," I said. "Then go read it on the mountain." And then the two faces became one again. A question, if I may," I said hesitantly. "Are you two or are you one?" The water shimmered, and I heard a choral reading of soprano and tenor and smile. "We are one that is two, and two that are one." "How can that be?" He said, the solitary one is primordial, but often useless. Imagine that buck without the doe. Imagine this H2 without the O. She added, or distance without time, or the occasional essential rhyme. Then both. We do arithmetic differently here. A soft and rippling laugh, like a kiss, as the face in the pool in the grove disappeared. I'm sorry?
It must be in Olympia. There's kids in the house too.
Children. Hello, children.
So does anybody else have a poem that you would like to read? Well, here's a short one that I like. You know, and many of these are just an extension of a small little personal experience that I have had, which this one is. Asking Father, page 35. I tiptoed into prayer, hesitantly. Father, do you mind that I am giving so much attention to her these days? There were no words. There was thought. I thought there was an instant embrace, warm, I thought, and soft and strong, that drew me in so close, and drew the mother in so close. And there we were, held tight in a circle of three, a familial trinity. That's what I thought. What I know is this. Tears on my cheeks. Amen.
Actually, I have a question. Let's see. Yeah.
Yes.
In Goodbye Goddesses, it says, never mind that the beloved Asherah had shared Solomon's temple with Yahweh for 236 of the 370 years of its existence. Could you say a little more about that?
Is that one of the poems?
Yes.
What page is it?
It's in Goodbye Goddesses, and I tried setting my Kindle to page number and it wouldn't. But it's in the early set.
I wasn't able to understand.
Oh,
Okay, here, now look, I can find it quickly. Goodbye, Goddesses.
Page
Okay,
15.
page 15. Page 15. Let me see. Well, yeah, this is just sort of the religious history of the loss of the mother. Let me read it, and then we'll see if we need to talk about it. Goodbye, Goddesses. I get it. When the great religion of monotheism developed on the desert scene, and Israel's prophets and kings felt commissioned to cleanse the tents and the tabernacle of the false gods, and especially the goddesses who had infiltrated from the surrounding nations, requiring that they scrub every name, every symbol, every female whiff of lily and of rose. For the Lord our God is one, and there is none other beside him. And the goddess shall be called anathema. Never mind that the beloved Asherah had shared Solomon's temple with Yahweh for 236 of the 370 years of its existence. It happened like unto the old English marriage law that states when two become one, the one is him. So it came to pass that Asherah and her sister goddesses, who had done their imperfect best to mother the people who had called them into being, were exiled all, sent without meat or drink or thank you or blessing into the unforgiving desert to die. Inhospitality indeed. And thus did the house of Israel become a motherless house, with only hidden tokens and whispered memories, as in the story of Rachel in her tent with the teraphim under her skirts, idols stolen from her father Laban, little images to remind her of the old ways, when women were honored and peace reigned under the goddess of Mesopotamia, for whom she was named Rachel, mother of the Holy Lamb. And is this ancient narrative not like unto the story of a man in America around the year 1912 who might load his family into his new Model T for a cross-country trip? And so enthusiastic is he to cover the miles that he leaves his wife at the service station in Pittsburgh. And when one of the sleeping children opens her eyes and says, "Where's mother?" is not the moment worthy of a monosyllabic and screeching halt of biblical proportions? Now, maybe that one is not quite as clear as it is to me. But, there are plenty of books that you can read about how before there was the Israeli, the patriarchy, there was, in many places, something of a matriarchy. And even sometimes there was partnership. Rianne Eisler has a wonderful book about how on the island of Crete, the civilization, there was one of partnership. Nobody's coffin was put above the other, and all kinds of interesting historical things that point to a partnership. So we know from history that there were goddesses that were worshipped by the people in the Old Testament before that became a sin, before it became something that just would not be allowed. And so the goddesses gradually died. Asherah was a major goddess in the old world, and the prophets and the people of the Old Testament made sure that these goddesses were destroyed. And so that's how we came to have this pretty much universal patriarchy. The goddesses that in various cultures, because of course the human mind in its earliest phase understood only that life was given through a woman. That's what happened. That's where life came from. And so the first measure of worshiping wherever our general life came from was female. And then things got turned upside down. You can do, there are many wonderful books about the ending of goddess worship in the early days. And so here in this poem, I'm just comparing it to our discovering, as a family would discover that somehow they left the mother behind at their service station on their trip. Where's mother? We are all of us, you people are waking up and saying, "Where's mother? Where's mother?" And we have to put on the brakes and screech and go back and find wherever it is that we left Mother. She didn't leave us. We left her.
Mhm.
Does anybody have another interesting poem?
Also, Madeline and group in the group house, if you need to speak, you need to unmute.
I'm sorry, it's hard for me to hear some of the sound. Tell me those words again.
This is the host. I'm talking to the group in the group meeting. If Carol Mason or Madeline, if you people want to speak, you'll need to unmute your meeting owl.
We have
I'm
now.
sorry. I'm sorry, Carol Lynn. Go ahead, please.
The poem that I wanted to suggest is on page 86, Saving Mother Earth. And what I appreciate is the way that you weave together two huge concerns.
Oh, yes.
Both.
Right. And you know, that much of the whole world is waking up to the idea that we are killing our environment. We are killing what we have sometimes called Mother Earth. And only by bringing back a reverence for the mother in the earth, the mother of the earth, can we save her. Okay, Saving Mother Earth, page 86. What if our planet's illness is partly a problem of gender? What if its birth announcement, when creation settled, had not been, "It's a girl," which in earliest times was the highest compliment, for earth and woman were twin bringers of life. And it wasn't until the undoing that the phrase became only a girl. And the boys decided that bigger was better and strongest was best, and raised him above her on the pronoun totem pole. And soon the word conquer comes to mind, followed by the words chattel and rape, after which the female and the female earth were never safe. I have to wonder, what if in the beginning the males had seen the earth as just one of the boys, or better yet, as the boss whom they had to please, the chief, the master who paid their wages in deer and water and minerals and mushrooms and demanded excellent care. But that ship has sailed, and so my best hope is this. What if today, because the gender climate has changed and women put men in prison for what used to be mere male privilege, what if the rising respect for the female in all her offices, from birthing a baby to leading a nation, what if that powerful respect continues to rise higher and higher like healing waters until it trickles down to cover the injured body of our mother, the earth? Yeah, we're not going to save this earth without developing and investing the kinds of energy that we have called female stuff. We are so overloaded with male energy because that's just what's being valued. But you know, we are in a time where a shift is happening, and you are part of it, and I am part of it, and discovering what we have lost by losing the mother goddess. This is all part of it. So we are doing our part to save our Mother Earth and save all the mothers on the earth and all the fathers on the earth. Because what's a father without a mother? Really, is not possible. So this era that we're living through right now is a potent one. And just by talking about this here, our thoughts, our energies, even right now, everything we've said, everything we've read, all of your commentary, all of my energy, this has gone out, because we are energy. Our words are energy. And today, you and I have done a bit of healing for the planet and for the human family. I see that we're close to the hour point. I'm not necessarily needing to go unless if there are more things that want to be said by the group, if there are any more questions that you want to ask, if there is another poem that somebody would like to ask for, I'm willing to just stick around for a while.
Carol Mason, do you want to jump in here, please, Carol Mason?
Well, thank you.
Well,
Carol?
yes, as, the questions that Daniel had left for us, we've really covered that, and it's really open for question and answer from the group. So Madeline starts at 3:30, but, and we have a little break, but I think we could, if others have questions to ask of Carol Lynn, that's the important time now. And we have already been doing that, so I don't have another thing per se.
Would you like to say something about Sophia and wisdom in the Old Testament?
I didn't hear all of that, but about Sophia, well, that was, to my understanding, that was one of the many names that that our mother was known by. Tell me, is there a poem here that I refer to Sophia in a way that interests you? Oh. Or what do you what does Sophia mean to you? To me, that's one of the various names of the phenomenon of the mother.
Well, it was my understanding that it was the name that wisdom was referred to in the Old Testament. As translations
Right.
left her out. It was
A long
forgotten.
time ago, I read, it was a Gnostic gospel by, I think it was Karen King, and it was a translation and a little bit of an exposition. And in that book, Sophia was, so when there was Adam and Eve, there was kind of like this little spiral of independent thought. And that was Sophia. And that was like this sudden burst of independence that kind of changed the relationship between humans and God, because we became independent. But there's also the Book of Wisdom in the Old Testament, but it's in the Apocrypha.
There is so much richness and so many new words that we find, new names that we find as we go back and back and back. What we're talking about here is it's so rich. Its richness seems never to end with how the whole concept of the feminine divine has shown up really in every civilization. It's wonderful.
Can you say a little more about the end of goddess worship and when Israel started smashing what they call the idols and all that the people were worshiping?
Well, I do not function really as a major historian. There are so many books that you could read that show step by step by step by step how all that happened. I just have a general view from a lot of books that I have read that early on there were, and we find some in the Old Testament, we find some of the names of the goddesses, and we're given to understand that, and boy, I remember a place in the Bible where supposedly Jehovah commands the Israelites to go into these goddess worshiping territories and clear the land so that the new civilization can be there. And I thought, my gosh, that phrase is blood curdling. Clear the land. It sounds like we're going to just take our weapons and go around. It sounds like we're going to clean it up of sagebrush. The goddess worshiping communities that lived early on in the lands that we came to know as the biblical lands, the goddess worshipers, they were sagebrush to, and somehow or other, the language that, we don't know what actual words God spoke. We don't know if God ever speaks words as we know words. But somehow or other, they felt that God was requiring them to clear the land. So what they did was to go through and with bloody instruments kill these civilizations that had been there for a long, long time, the goddess worshiping civilizations. That's how they cleared the land to make it available for the new Israel, for the Israelite patriarchs to take over. I mean, it's an awful sight to think about. There's nothing holy in that. Nothing at all holy. But that's how it happened. The goddess worshiping societies were destroyed through blood.
It almost sounds like some of the oligarchies in today's world.
Yes, yes.
Carol Lynn, do you have time for something fun? Would somebody help me find the page number for Sunbeam Story?
Sunbeam
Story. I don't know what the page number is, but I just love
yeah,
that one.
we can find it.
57.
Thank you.
57.
Mhm.
57.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep, I like this one. Yep.
I do too.
Do you folks have one of the songs that you grew up with? Jesus wants me for a sunbeam to shine for him each day. Do you have that song?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Did you
indeed.
say yes? Did I hear yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Sunbeam Story.
Those of us over 70. Sorry, Madeline.
When I was little and learned that Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, the narrow shaft of bright that shoots through the screen, I figured something was up, something strange and wonderful. And when I learned from the new physics that I am formed of light, formed of star stuff even, I was sure of it. And I shone as a good sunbeam should. But then I remembered that Christ, who lights the world, said that I should do works like unto his, that my own light is not a narrow shaft. And it's time to throw off that bushel. I am no longer small. I see skies that are too dark. I see nights that are too long, and I see with wondering awe that Jesus wants me for a sunrise.
Amen, sister. Preach it.
Thank you. Oh, are there others?
Amazing.
Yep, that's what we're here on this world to be, is to be part of the sunrise. And part of the sunrise that will brighten this dark world is the light of the feminine, the mortal and the divine, godly feminine. Is there anything that somebody would say, oh, I wish I'd ask her to read this one, or there's a sweet one on page 103, Psalm. Mother, speak the words again. In the beginning, there was darkness upon the face of the deep, and the Elohim moved upon the darkness and spoke, and their words were, let there be light, and there was light. This day there is darkness upon the dead sea of my soul. I stumble and cannot rise. The sun freezes before it hits my heart, my harp. I cannot pluck and I cannot sing. I am a child who calls for my mother. Deliver me now from darkness. Speak again the words you spoke in the beginning. Let there be light. I will speak the words after you, Mother. I will speak them with you. We will speak them together until it is so. Let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be light. I just turned a page and I have to give you this one. 82. Under your wings. Divine Mother, gather me as promised. Gather me as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. Sweep me to you now with feathers soft and strong. A storm comes, and the violent sky cracks loud and open. The rain would wash me like a leaf into the stream. Press the fragile, fearful ball of me close to your dear body, warm and remembered. Safe silence is under the quick beat of your heart. Divine Mother, leave me not to the storm. Gather me, gather me, gather me under your beautiful as angel wings. You know, there are metaphors in the Bible that do point to the femaleness of godliness. And that's one of them. Anybody have a poem that you just can't leave until we hear it?
I was just thinking about all the speeches in the Bible that are like the Magnificat of Mary, or when they're crossing over the Jordan, it's the Song of Miriam. So there's many places where women are saying like really strong statements. And it's like, pay attention here. This is really from God. because here is a woman speaking, in a sense.
Yes. Yes, we do have those things we have inherited that remind us of the femaleness. And you know, as I have watched the Catholic shifting right now, that there I feel some envy. I mean, the Catholicism is a very patriarchal system, but there's a lot of femininity in it. We saw the robes, the colors. We saw the the love for Mary. We there's a softness there. Well, you know, this whole thing is just so complicated. All of our history, all of our current systems have or have had in the past a feminine underpinning. And we're at a place right now where we are, in so many ways, rediscovering the value of the feminine in its largest sense, not just in its utilitarian sense of giving us a baby and keeping the house clean. We're remembering some kind of huge need that we have, that if we are brave enough to redefine who God is, if we're brave enough to say God is our mother, father, or God is our father/mother, however we want to do it, the word mother must come back into our vocabulary.
This poem is pretty long, but I really liked it. Our Mother and Her Dove, I thought was
Tell me the page.
page 78. It's pretty long.
Well, if you got the money, honey, I got the time. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, this. Can you imagine the fun I had writing all these poems?
Definitely.
I mean, you just can't imagine how fun it was. So much more fun than going to the movies or going bowling or reading a silly. The fun that I had here, and then you know the fun in a very sacred way of understanding that you are having the same kind of spiritual fun with me. It's just delicious. Okay. And maybe we'll just say that this would be the last one. I think you folks have other things you have to do. Although if somebody has an absolutely imperative comment or question, we will entertain that. But here we go. Our Mother and Her Dove. I sent out a dove to find the mother, and I left the window open. The mother, whose signature was the dove in ancient days, written with a flourish of feathers, white against blue. So many of the first goddesses were known by the doves in their hands or the doves in their hair. There was Asherah of the groves, the tree of life sprung from Mother Earth and adopted as the Hebrew goddess. Yeah, that's the title of a wonderful book, The Hebrew Goddess, Raphael Petai. I think you all need to get that book. There was Asherah of the groves, the tree of life sprung from Mother Earth and adopted as the Hebrew goddess. The wind came, and the wind lifting the dove and shaking the tree, the ruach, the wind, the breath, the spirit, a force all feminine. The Spirit of God, Ruach Elohim, was hovering over the waters, and her children knew she was the female presence, the indispensable aspect of the God that created them in God's own image, created them male and female. She suckled the Hebrews and fed the early Christians, and they gave thanks to her as mother, their mother, whom they called the Holy Spirit, whose dove descended to bless the baptism of Jesus. That same dove I sent out when I left the window open. History has drawn an unholy curtain between us and our ancient mother. But I pulled back the veil and I saw. Here's what they did. The monks who translated to please the powers that be, and the powers were he. At the stroke of a quill, the Hebrew she became the Greek it, and then the English he. And no one cared as the bright feminine words fluttered to the cold floor like clipped wings of a dove. But can a mother forget her child? Or a child forget her mother? I sent out a dove to find her, and I left the window open. The dove is sister to the homing pigeon, so I knew she could find her way back. I had touched her sweet, soft head, and she knew the scent of me. I sent out a dove, and she returned. She fluttered through the window to my open hand. A note was tied to her leg, a little scroll written by the one for whom she is a sign. It read, "Dear one, please forgive the monks. I know you love poetry, so here are 3 haiku from me to you. The past is dust and dissolves in one small gust of God's eternity. Feel the wind shifting. Feel the Ruach Elohim sweep across the land. Feel me move through the holy of holies of your heart and build a nest. Love to all. Please tell the others." I write back to her each evening in my prayers. Sometimes I call her Holy Spirit, often merely Mother. So we have done a good work here in reminding each other the history and the present and the need, the future and the need and the remarkable opportunity that you and I have in our own religious communities and apart from our religious communities to bring back the vocabulary, bring back the image, bring back the words, bring back the concept that the God that created us is mother and father in some amazing oneness that we can't even imagine. So
Carol
thank
Lynn,
you all for inviting me. God bless you. God bless me. God bless us all. And so it is. Amen and amen.
and
Amen.
we all join in saying thank you. Please raise your hands and express your deep gratitude to Carol Lynn for being with us. We are so grateful, and indeed, God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciation.